Watch Debate is back, and this week we're talking about watches that are underrated that deserve more love. Come hear the conversation. Hi, you guys.
Hey, Emily.
Awesome to see you.
Yeah.
More debate, more debate, more debate.
Good to be back.
Yes, it is time to get to the nitty-gritty about something. I kind of tipped off to the topic, but we are talking about watches that deserve more love. They're underrated as a whole, but honestly, it's time to shine a light on them. Make your case for why they deserve more love, and then you guys ultimately will weigh in. So before we get to your guys' choices this week, I would love to see, what are you wearing on your wrist, Ripley?
Well, something, wearing a Breitling Chronomat, something that deserves more love, some of that 2000s Breitling stuff.
Oh yeah.
A lot of value to be had on that side of the equation because everyone's thinking about small watches. They're dainty, dressy Cartiers. Now is the time to buy something inappropriately large for your wrist and have a ton of fun with it.
I like it.
In all of its glory. Lovely. What about you, Justin?
I got the memo, Breitling memo anyway. Avenger. This is the new one. It's a really nice watch. Ripley, what do you think about this one?
I really like, I was so the Avenger has kind of had a touch and go history with class. I was getting ready to make fun of the most recent generation of Avengers, and then when they come out, they were surprisingly tasteful. Like, I actually really think they did a good job with the series. It looks intentional, utilitarian, love the grooves and the lugs. And I've seen all the different executions of them. They did a good job.
They're good, yeah.
You guys want to know what I'm wearing?
Yeah, what do you got?
I've gone on one that I feel is maybe like gaining some traction, but overall underrated as well.
Underrated, yes.
Gotta love a cocktail watch.
Yeah.
This happens to be a Rolex. Just fun. They're all unique, and you know how I am with my watches. I don't want to see other people in them if at all possible. So the rare details, the kind of under the radar piece as a whole, I'll find it. I will. And I love dainty. It's more my
You
speed.
could fit 15 of those in this case.
Yeah.
Hey, I think we should. But you know what's funny though is that you would pull this off just as equally as this.
I
So-
think you could pull this off just as
I
equally as
would.
that.
I would definitely try and change up my outfit a little bit. Nonetheless, this is just what we are wearing today. What are you guys wearing while watching? We'd love to hear anything and everything, so be sure to leave a comment and let us know. All right, topic at hand today. Yes, we're doing a little bit of a debate. What watch is underrated that deserves more love? Okay? You guys can drill down and be as specific as you want, or you can stay overarching. Nonetheless, I want to hear your points. I want to give the chance to give you some points for your points, and then ultimately turn this over to you all at home so that you can decide where you fall in this debate as well. So without any other waiting, are you guys ready to do this?
Let's
Ripley,
do it.
I'm going to give you the torch first. What watch do you feel is underrated that deserves a little bit more love?
So I guess I have kind of two. One isn't so much a watch as it is an entire brand. JLC. JLC as a whole, very underrated, especially in America. I mean, there's a reason they're known as the watchmaker's watchmaker. It was JLC calibers used in stuff like the Royal Oak. Like, JLC is so good at what they do. They also don't seem to be not really following the hype ever. They just sort of, and probably that's why they don't have all the attention. They just kind of do what they do, but you look at stuff like the Reverso, purpose-built sports watch for polo, super interesting, iconic design, fun fidget spinner functionality. Then you look at stuff like the Heliotourbilon, super impressive, very, very complicated works, super underrated. I feel like no one really ever talks about him, at least in this country.
Right.
But if we're gonna go watch model or like as a whole, relative to its other catalog siblings, I'm gonna say the Omega Constellation. We got the Seamaster, Bond watch, all of that. Got the Speedmaster, moon landing, all of that. And then, you know, we got the DeVille because you need something dressy. And then what happened to the Constellation? I know it's big in Asia, but like that watch, there's a lot going on there. The Globemaster's fantastic. We can get into that one in a bit. But like, yeah, the Constellation as a whole.
I can see that. I actually agree about the JLC. I think JLC is very overlooked. Yeah, and maybe not the most, but it's up there on my list as well because it is. JLC has some great,
But I
great
couldn't
stuff.
choose a singular model from it. Like, choose your pick. They have
You're
even
right.
their dive watches are distinct looking. It doesn't look like a Submariner.
Yeah.
But like, I couldn't choose a specific model. It's just the whole brand.
And I don't think it is. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, there's this one JLC standing out that I feel like doesn't get any attention and really should. It really is. It's more of the brand just deserves more attention because they do so much good stuff. And I mean, so much of their vintage stuff is amazing too. Like, we don't really see any of it here. But personally, coming across it and just appreciating some of the vintage pieces that they do, really, really nice stuff.
It's probably just because everyone's too afraid to pronounce their brand name in public.
But that's kind of par for the course, right? You could say that just any of them, you just shorten to letters. AP is the same way. You can just go with the letters.
PP.
I like the call out for JLC. I am not the most versed in JLC as a whole, but maybe this is my sign to start, right? You've got kind of your favorites of the brand that are definitely a little bit more of a household name, but ultimately I could educate myself a little bit more in this world, and that's the point. Like, how did you start to learn about JLC? Like, obviously you've been in watches for some time, but what caught your eye first?
I thought the Reverso was cool, but then you keep seeing the name pop up in reference to other, brands that they were supplying at a time. And you think, well, what do they make under their own house? A bunch of stuff, and they've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
So
their DNA has stayed true.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool that they just do their own thing. They're not making the, hype chronograph with a panda dial of the moment or anything like that. They just kind of do
points.
what they do. But again, I couldn't choose a singular model from it. That's
okay.
So that's why I went with a Constellation.
Okay.
I have a similar, I'll do something similar as Ripley, I guess. So rather than a specific watch, I'm going to say one of the most underrated, I'm going to go Rolex, is Sea Dweller.
Wow.
I think the Sea Dweller often gets overlooked. It kind of lives in the shadow of its little brother, ironically, the Submariner, right? The Submariner is, it's so iconic. It's the watch, or at least one of like the headliners from Rolex.
Yeah.
And the Sea Dweller is more capable. It's meant to dive deeper, has, different, like bigger specs, yet also somehow takes a backseat to the Submariner. I think that it's just, a lot of it is marketing and hype, and Submariner is the cooler one. Also, it's a little cheaper, so I felt like it might have gained some traction, and that helped in its popularity. Those watches are very, very similar, especially aesthetically, right? Like, they look very, very close. So to save some money on the Submariner, I feel like a lot of people would go that way. But I really like the Sea Dweller, and if you are looking for that really capable, like the deepest of the deep, the biggest of the big, we go to the deep sea, right? And so I feel like it kind of lives in that weird area in between, like the maxed out version, which is the deep sea, and the Submariner, which is almost the same thing. But I think personally, it's a really nice watch. It's also a little different. You talk about, having something on your wrist that not everyone else has. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of Sea Dwellers out there. It's not like you're super original, but compared to subs, like, you're gonna see a lot more people with that same watch with a Submariner versus a Sea Dweller. And also, to get a little more granular, I'm gonna say, and this has changed a little bit over the past year or so, I would say the Milgauss. This would have been a very, very strong choice for me if it wasn't just recently discontinued, which I felt like has brought it a lot of attention and, given it a little more love. But I feel like that watch also gets overlooked all the time. It's one of my personal favorites, but again, it lives in that weird land. It's not really sporty, not really dressy. It's professional, but it's kind of quirky with the lightning bolt hand. It's a little bit fun. So I felt like that one kind of gets overlooked a lot, which again, I appreciate that people are getting a little more love to it now that it's been discontinued. But yeah, I feel like that one should be a bigger watch.
Huh. 2 watches, phenomenal histories as a whole.
Yeah.
Also pretty fun approaches from a modern perspective. I like it. Do you have anything to say about his choices?
Yeah, so I completely agree that it kind of gets overlooked because it's caught in this in-between land. And if we're talking strict functionality, the Sea Dweller is the watch the Submariner should have become. If the Submariner wasn't so awesome at being a dive watch, like, the Sea Dweller doesn't actually offer anything that anyone except a handful of individuals need, and those individuals aren't going to be diving in the $10,000 to $12,000 dive watch. So no one needs a helium escape valve. No one needs more than 300 meters of water resistance. The Sea Dweller is just an exercise in being superfluous, and if you want that, like you said, go to the deep sea. So it is now caught in this in-between, and that's kind of Rolex's own doing, but I think that's well-deserving. It deserves that kind of overlooked status. It's fine to be overlooked. On paper, it should be what the Submariner became, but it didn't because the Submariner's rad, and Rolex was never going to change the Submariner. So the Sea Dweller's caught there, but I'm going to go ahead and say it deserves to be. You look at the Constellation, it's a better movement than what you're going to find in something like the Seamaster Pro 300. It's got a long history if you want to look at stuff as far as like chronometry performance and all of that. the whole constellation thing dates back to the observatory trials, and that's why it's got the stars and the emblem on the back. And then if you look at the steel model, that is not a steel fluted bezel, that is a tungsten bezel, so that fluting's not going to get damaged and dinged up. It's a super, super hard metal. And it's a fraction of the price of what you're going to get for, you know.
And configuration's pretty high up there. I mean,
it can go as up as you want to go. Yeah, so I feel like it isn't, there's nothing about it that makes the Constellation. If you want the integrated bracelet style, you got it. You want something dressy, you get a Glowmaster. It hasn't done anything to deserve its overlook status. The Sea Dweller, it brought something no one wanted to the party in the form of a helium escape valve, and just shows up an hour late being like, hey guys, I brought, look what I've got. And everyone's like, oh, cool. And then turn back to what they were doing, which was the Submariner.
You're right, with like the specs, I mean, it's paper, right? For 99.9% of people or whatever, right? Most people, doesn't make any difference. The Submariner is way more than capable of whatever you're gonna throw at it. That's not really the point. The point is kind of the stats on paper, right? It's always a race to the most accurate, the lightest, the thinnest, the most water resistant, right? Everything is like, whether you need it or not doesn't stop you from wanting the best. And when you want the best,
you get a deep sea. Apparently, you don't get the Sea Dweller.
That's true. If you're really looking, but also the deep sea is very different. Where the Submariner, like, to me, the Submariner and the Sea Dweller are competitors, and the Deep Sea and Sea Dweller are a little less competitors, just based on aesthetics and wearability, and and I'm talking day to day. We're not talking about really diver stuff here, because again, that's a fraction of the people. So I think, yeah, it is better. Whether you need it or it will help you at all, that's another conversation. Let's be honest, probably won't. But it is more capable and it is better. Where I feel like the Constellation is kind of the opposite. It really doesn't bring anything that new or different to the table. Like, I feel like Omega, I don't know why, maybe it's this market, but they don't really, like you said, they're Speedmasters and the Aquaterras, and they're pushing everything else, and the Constellation's just kind of like, it's nice. It's nice.
Give me an integrated bracelet watch like that is as recognizable with less hype than the Constellation.
Wow.
Like,
there isn't one. You're right. There isn't one.
There really isn't one. Like the Tissot PRX at several $100s is like has a way more strong following, at least in the United States. Like the Constellation, it has done nothing deserving. People just don't like the look, or they think it's too dated, or there's something, but like...
I do think that's part of it. I think aesthetics, the Constellation doesn't resonate with at least the US market as strongly. And I think that is part of the reason it's overlooked, just because of style and what other brands are doing. And right, I mean, they all influence each other and they influence trends. And that one, like you said, it's kind of different. And it's cool. Like, it's a cool watch. I like the history behind it, and I know it's very popular in other markets. But it just really hasn't like found its groove here.
I guess it also feels a little bit expensive for what it is. I was just saying, well, I don't own a Constellation, I own a Speedmaster. It's like, well, what if you bought another Omega? Get another Seamaster or Speedmaster.
Yeah.
But I like that we're shining a light on some of these nonetheless. Your guys' points are definitely intriguing. I think there's always the case for a watch to kind of get some more love based on personal preference. You definitely love the history side of pieces, but also just the actual technical component for the price point is really where you lean, right? And I think that the Constellation does offer that. Aesthetically, I think the variations available are wonderful, right? You fit it to exactly what you want as well. So I like this a lot. You know that it's hard to try to outshine something like the Submariner, right? And when a luxury watch is being proposed as a, functional dive piece, are you really gonna risk, losing that in the water? I don't know. It's hard to make the case for that. However, I think when your wrists fit appropriately for the Sea Dweller, it becomes an option, right? Like, if you love something like that, it's a conversation point. You can actually, kind of dig into that historical significance of that watch. The Milgauss in all of its glory, right? It's had kind of a unique history in and of itself, but where it ended and got discontinued recently is a pretty great point. It'll be interesting to see if they bring this back in any capacity, whether it gets updated or not. Surely there's a lot to
Got to
update
go
there.
past more than mill. Got to have like the trail gas at this point.
Yeah.
But
It's long overdue.
I appreciate your guys' points. As always with Watch Debate, it is not about what we think in the end. It is ultimately where you guys have a chance to weigh in and what you think. So what watch is underrated that deserves more love in your point of view? Are you agreeable from Ripley's suggestions from JLC and potentially the Omega Constellation? Or are you more in Justin's camp where he speaks to the Sea Dweller and the Milgauss as well? Be sure to weigh in and let us know. We obviously really care about your guys' thoughts and points as well. So Watch Debate, another one in the books.
Good one.
I appreciate you guys bringing the fun, but also bringing in the facts. So we'll be back with a fresh episode soon, everybody. Until then, be well.